Social distancing is another way of being fortified. Welcome to the show. I want to thank everyone who watched the last episode. It was a milestone type episode. I had my first guest on the show, my friend and former colleague Ed Moore from the Edson Leader. He had a good time recording, and we're actually planning on doing more shows. So follow me on my social media for updates on that in the future. This episode today will just be me. I have some opinions about the COVID-19 pandemic that I want to express. I didn't really have the chance to in the previous episode. I was primarily trying to let Ed talk and give his take and all the knowledge he had found himself in his research. Now, I'll also be doing a similar episode on my French language podcast, Fortified. So if you could speak French, or if you just want to hear me talk in French about COVID, well, give it a watch. You can find that podcast by searching Fortin, Lefort, and my last name on BitChute or YouTube. You should be able to find my channels there. Now, before we get started, I want to try to make sure that this show doesn't get too ranty or angry, but I can't really guarantee it. I don't want to come off like I'm some pro wrestler from the 80s that's doing trash talking his opponent. But if it comes off that way, well, so be it. I have some strong opinions about this, and despite my best efforts, I may come off stronger than I wanted, but we'll see. Now, I don't overly want to talk about COVID-19 too much, but there are some things that I feel need to be said. I don't care what you think of what I have to say about it. Like I said, I feel I need to say my piece regarding what's going on. So, think of this episode more like an editorial of sorts. All right? With that, let's get on with the show. Now, before we get into everything, I want to give some facts on and statistics on COVID-19. I've looked up the numbers, and they'll probably be out of date by the time this actually airs. But as the date of this recording, which is April 12th, there are 1,754,457 confirmed cases of COVID-19 worldwide. The worldwide deaths are 107,512, and there are 395,418 recoveries. Canada we definitely have cases here. Out of all those, Canada has 25,195 confirmed cases. There are 648 deaths and 6,309 recoveries. Again, I stress, these are the numbers I was able to find online as of April 12th. Again, by the time this airs, they're all probably going to be different. It's probably going to have gone up again. And just to be fair, when I started working on this podcast, I've already had to change the numbers in this section at least 3 times already before shooting. So that should tell you how quick this is moving. Now, that's how fast the pandemic is spreading, how fast the disease is spreading. Canada finds itself in 13th place as far as the highest numbers of confirmed cases. The Netherlands, Switzerland, Belgium, Turkey, Iran, the UK, the United Kingdom, China, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the United States all have more cases than us here in Canada. As I said, Canada comes in 13th as far as the total numbers of confirmed cases. But they still keep going up. They're going up at a pretty fast rate. So I don't know if we're going to see numbers that reflect the U.S. cases, hundreds of thousands. I really don't think we're going to go that high. But we're pretty close to the Netherlands, so who knows? We could go up to 12th, 11th, maybe even break top 10. A top 10 you don't want to break. But anyway, realistically, we all need to buckle down. There is no vaccine for COVID-19. So social distancing and self-isolation will become our new reality, for now at least. I think everyone thinking this will be over in a couple of months is like being optimistic to a fault. It's ridiculous. The fact that we don't have a vaccine is what's making this so much worse than it should be. The fact we don't have a vaccine is why we have to take what seems like such drastic action to curb the spread of the disease. So, next time you're going to write on a rant and rave or on social media, you're going to run your mouth about we're overreacting, just take that into account before spreading such lunacy. Now, there's one story that I found interesting related to COVID, and it has to do with the Yukon, where I live. And I've got some things to say about this. But first, I'll tell you what happened. There's a story about a couple from Quebec who drove from that province to Whitehorse, Yukon, only to get onto a plane and fly to the remote community of Old Crow. This means they crossed 6 provinces and 1 territory to get to that destination. That is roughly 5,000 kilometers. They drove realistically from one end of the country to the other, just to get to where they were going. Old Crow is a northern community in the Yukon. You can only get there by plane. There's no roads up there. There's no roads to get there. The population is 221 people. It's a self-governing area of the Vuntut-Gwitchin First Nation. Vuntut-Gwitchin Chief Danatiza Tram spoke to the media about this incident after it all broke and hit the media. The reports indicated that the couple wanted to flee COVID-19 and decided to go to Old Crow after dreaming about the community. They had never been there before landing on March 27th. The couple were stopped at the airport and turned away. The location of the couple right now is not being released. They were kept at an apartment at the local co-op until they were put on a plane to get out of Old Crow. The Yukon government has stated that the couple is in self-isolation, but again, has not released their location. Now, because of this incident, anyone wanting to go to Old Crow now needs the approval of Tribal Council before they can visit the community. So those are the facts of what happened here. So, I wanted to talk about this because it shows the utter stupidity of the human race in general right now. And especially when you also consider hoarding toilet paper, it's clear we're not a smart race of beings. We are all simpletons. All of our advanced technology is the exception, not the rule, when it comes to humans. People think that just because there is a pandemic, the basic rules and laws of society and common decency no longer apply. This proves it. Also, you want more proof? Look at any Facebook rant or rave pages. You'll see people complaining that traffic laws are still being enforced by any methods available to the authorities. There's a lot I want to say, but I'm going to stick to the topic of the Quebec couple. These two panicking morons are going to be the reason, or at least part of the reason, the government, led by Justin Trudeau of the Liberal Party, may in the future clamp down further on COVID prevention measures. If martial law or other further clampdowns are made, it is because of these people panicking and making a run to a remote community. I don't care if this offends the two Quebecers. Your inability to deal with your own panic and anxiety has put all of the communities you visited along the way in danger of COVID-19. All of these are isolated communities and have little access to local health care. You have also put our civil liberties in danger. Not just for the duration of the crisis, but if more severe measures are invoked, now we have to hope that those in power are willing to give up the increased power once the pandemic ends. Did you think of that before you behaved like frightened children? I think the answer's obvious. Anyone listening, please don't contact these people. You'll be the one that looks bad in this scenario. Just leave them alone. I'm trying to show everyone that poor actions are more than just risking exposure of COVID to others. When we take action like this and give in to panic, we're putting everything our country stands for at risk. Look at history. How many dictators rose during the crisis? Don't give power-hungry sycophants the reason they've been looking for to steal power. Take some responsibility for your own actions. There are politicians in this world that feel they will have to take some kind of action to prevent this from ever happening again. I call them busybody politicians. They see something they disagree with and feel they have to take action to ban it. Either that or they feel they must be seen as doing something, or feel that they will give them brownie points, or maybe they do act as some genuine sense of concern. Either way, the busybody will do something that screws the rest of us over. How the couple got from Whitehorse before someone noticed and stopped them is beyond me. I've driven on the routes that they likely took. In northern BC and in Yukon in general, a Quebec license plate will stick out. This may cause a push for provincial and territorial governments to take actions along either closing or tightening up borders. Who knows? Yukon hasn't closed its border, but now we have officials at the road entrances to the territory as well as airports. These officers ask you why you're here, and if you're traveling to get home through the Yukon, just say to get to Alaska, to the Northwest Territories, or down south to BC, you now have 24 hours to get through the entire territory. The officers will ask you, what are your self-isolation plans, and everywhere you plan to stop. You'll have to give them your address and phone number. They will check in on you to make sure you are complying with all self-isolation orders. In Yukon, if you're coming home, you have to go into a 14-day self-isolation. Not negotiable. It's an order. Failure to do so, you're breaking the law. You could get charged. You could go to jail. You could get fined. You both could apply. So realistically, the territory has already clamped down further. I don't know if it really is because of this couple, but I guarantee it was a factor. Now, some of these measures may have already been planned for and just not rolled out by the time this couple made their panic run at the end of March. But I guarantee that there was somebody in power in Yukon that said, and that's why we did this, to prevent that. I know I've started to notice myself more out of territory license plates in my jurisdiction here in Yukon. Now, it's not because I'm looking for them. It's just they tend to stick out more because now, because of this story, we tend to somehow notice them more. It's not that there's more people, it's just we somehow are noticing them more. But thanks to panickers, I'm starting to wonder, who are you? Why are you here? Why are you not home? Why are you not in your home jurisdiction, or the jurisdiction that plate says you should be in? So, realistically, think your actions through. Don't give these busybody politicians the reason they need to take action. Think for yourself, be responsible, be an adult. Don't be a panicking child. Alright, now we're going to move on to the next segment. And if you listen to the last one, you should know exactly how I feel about politicians and how much I trust them. But yes, I am actually very much worried about what I call the busybody politicians. These are the people that see something they don't agree with and feel they have to do something to stop it. They exist both on the left of the political spectrum as well as the right. Think of the social justice left as well as the religious right. These are the best examples. They are the people that moralize and want to tell you what you can and cannot do. Those exist on both sides. Don't try to tell me otherwise. But I do worry that these busybodies will exploit the general anxiety and fear in society right now to make some kind of power grab. Now, I naturally do not trust people who actively seek out power. If your childhood dream was to be the elected leader of our country, or any other country in general, I already don't want to vote for you. I trust politicians even less when they make careers out of politics. Now, I don't care what issue we're facing. Giving emergency powers, or whatever you want to call them, is not something I will take lightly, ever. When a politician makes these proposals, I have questions. I want to know, why do you need these powers? Could you accomplish what is needed without them? What are the limits? Do these powers expire? Will there be a review? If these are not answered, if any of them aren't answered, I will reject your proposal out of hand. I don't care if we are at war or are fighting a pandemic. Absolute power should rarely, if ever, be given to a politician. Especially, I'll use Canada as an example, especially if the politician is governing in a minority government setting of a parliamentary system. Or, I'll give you an example using the US. If the current president or person in charge only has, 5, 4, 6 months left of their term? No. I'm sorry. You should not be given those powers. You're at the end of your term. Now, I disagree with most conservatives in Canada over Justin Trudeau's original COVID-19 relief plan. I don't think it was trying to be a power grab necessarily. Now, I understand there were provisions that would allow him to when I say him, to tax and spend on relief however he wanted. I'm glad that got defeated, but I'd also be saying the same thing if Andrew Scheer had won the election and proposed some kind of legislation like that. But like I said, I'm glad that part of the COVID response bill was defeated and the relief actually being offered to people passed. Now, sticking just to Canada, Trudeau needs to govern in a minority parliament. Period. End of story. You can try to argue otherwise with me, but you will not be able to convince me. If you ask me, Canada does not have the cases to warrant that extreme of a response if we're talking government getting more power. We need to take action to bend the curve and protect our healthcare system, sure. But Trudeau doesn't need more power, and even if he did, I feel we regret allowing our liberties to be curtailed in such a way. I think right now, with what we're doing all right, considering how severe the pandemic is elsewhere. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. At the time of this recording, Canada has roughly 23,000 cases of the virus out of 1.7 million confirmed cases worldwide. We have over 600 deaths and over 6,000 recoveries. This is a small portion of the worldwide numbers. We are number 13 on the list of the most confirmed cases. Again, we're doing all right if you ask me. We don't need to be giving the government more powers to try to enforce orders that reduce our civil liberties. Now, why am I ranting about this? There is a country I can point to that I think is doing a very poor job, and it's Hungary. It's been reported in the media that the Hungarian parliament just passed a bill that would give PM Viktor Orban more power. There was no sunshine clauses or end date to this bill. There is not even a provision in there about reviewing these powers to see if, okay, we can scale back or now we can cut them. This just gives the government in Hungary the power to rule by decree. It is argued that a time limit on the Hungarian measures cannot be set because we don't know when the crisis will end. Okay, fine. That's fair. We don't know when it will end. But if you ask me, that is not enough to justify the risk of a dictatorship rising. Again, I'm going to throw numbers at you and take into account that they're probably out of date by the time this airs. But Hungary has even less cases than Canada. As the US dwarfs our numbers are double, or not double, they're somewhat dwarfed Hungary's numbers are somewhat dwarfed by ours. Hungary has 1,190 cases, confirmed cases, 112 recoveries, and 77 deaths. So why that country has to get authoritarian is beyond me. The Hungarians should not put up with this. With the passing of this bill in Hungary, there is fear that the media could be muzzled in the name of preventing fake news. Who decides what fake news is? Who knows? That's the problem. This makes me wonder, is it going to be essentially anybody who says otherwise to the official information released by the government is going to be shut down? I don't know. This is why we, despite needing to take action to protect ourselves, we can't let our governments adopt authoritarian measures. Now, again, I say this not as somebody who doesn't want to help people during the crisis. I get why we're doing what we're doing. There's no vaccine. Our healthcare systems, regardless of how they're operated, are not equipped to deal with COVID-19 unchecked. They would all collapse or crumble under the strain of trying to deal with all these cases. We would never be able to keep up with the demand for medical supplies. And don't get me started, there aren't enough ventilators, there aren't enough beds, there aren't enough, again, not even a vaccine. There's nothing we can do. So, we need to social distance and self-isolate. There's no way around it. We can't operate as business as usual. But if we're going to order that non-essential businesses and their workers are to close and stay home, we need to offer some kind of financial support. We can't let these people lose their homes and let the businesses go under, or let people get evicted. I'm not going to be overly concerned about giant corporations. However, I do feel for their employees, their low-level employees, I should say. Those are people that also need help. Small businesses owners need help. Families need help. Relief plans need to be put in place. I don't know how many times I could say that. That needs to be done. If the plan was to keep everybody home, where we all go broke and businesses go under, how is that not just as bad, if not worse, than let the virus run roughshod over all society? So we're clear. People need help. Politicians can go take a long walk off a short bridge if they feel they want to get more power. They don't need it. We can't risk it. Luckily, the left and the right seem to be agreeing on the fact that people need help. Though they still are arguing on details, look at the US as an example. Canada, we at least sorted it out for the most part. But history shows, and I can't stress this enough, if you give power-hungry buffoons the chance, they will take power. I don't think it'll be our Prime Minister. I don't think it'll be US President Donald Trump. And maybe Viktor Orban will walk back all the powers he got from that bill. I hope I'm wrong that there will be no leader in the world, or no dictatorships, or no authoritarian regimes that rise out of this. I hope those worries are hot air. But again, history shows those kind of regimes rise out of a crisis, and we're in a legitimate crisis. Now, for those of you here in Canada that are worried about Trudeau, I'll give you an example, and hopefully you'll be able to take this at face value. His father, Pierre Trudeau, went through, of course, a crisis that was a lot less severe than COVID-19. But during his term as Prime Minister, he had to use the War Measures Act during the October crisis in 1970. The Front de Libération du Québec, that's a terrorist organization, kidnapped 2 public officials in the name of Quebec sovereignty. They also committed terrorism on the streets of Quebec. The War Measures Act gave the government extra powers that suspended civil liberties and it was used to bust up the FLQ. Pierre Trudeau did relinquish those powers when the crisis was over. So Justin already has a pretty close role model on how to use such powers if he had to. So I take some solace in that. However, he could go a completely different way. We don't know. Now, another thing that really concerns me with this, and I found this not too long ago, I found an article on CBC stating that the Alberta government, under United Conservative Party leader Jason Kenney, may look at tracking people through their cell phones to monitor compliance with quarantine orders. Of course, no sunshine clauses or end date mentioned in the article about this measure. As far as I know, they're looking into it. They're not actually going to do it. Concern is warranted on this. This is authoritarian madness, if you ask me. Now, it's not as severe as it could have been. It could be proposed to use cell phone tracking all our cell phones to make sure nobody goes out. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the scale here. Measures, like authoritarian measures, will always start small. And they'll slowly increase and increase and increase to the point where, there we go, we have no more liberties left. They start small and escalate from there. Concern is warranted, and ultimately Kenny may not go through with it, but the fact that stuff like this gets put on the table and treated like it may actually happen is what this worries me greatly. And that people may actually start cheering it on and going, yeah, we need this. No, we don't. We don't. We don't need to risk. This is not a risk we need to take. Now, having read all this and researched all this, I start to question what I would prefer. Dying from the virus or living under a totalitarian dictatorial regime? I would choose the virus. I think it would be more merciful, to be honest with you. I really do. I really do. Alright. So now I want to move on to another segment. Here, I want to briefly go over what I feel some of the lessons we should be learning with regards to COVID-19. This pandemic's quick spread should be clear warning signs that we need to change some of the things that are going on in our society. Of course, I don't think I'm telling other countries how they should be run. All I want to do is present these as food for thought. I think we're going to have to move towards tighter borders. Open or looser borders should be reconsidered at this point. I'm sure that part of the spread in some areas is due to less restrictive borders. In my opinion, this will explain the spread in Europe. I'm curious to see how well the current iteration of the European Union will fare once this crisis is over. I could see more countries wanting to tighten up their borders in Europe, which may cause other states to leave the EU. Maybe it won't happen. I don't know. I think there's going to be a push. I think we should be pushing towards tighter borders, reconsidering who we let in, all that stuff. It's going to be uncomfortable topics to broach, but we're going to have to. Manufacturing is another topic. This pandemic has shown clearly, or at least should have shown clearly, that we need to have more local manufacturing than we do presently. Now, I know it's not possible to bring back every job that was outsourced away, but we need to make some of our own things. We'll say necessities for the sake of argument. We need to stop relying on exports for antibiotics, medicines, and medical supplies. There is no excuse at this point to continue to rely on exports on those. This part is already happening. We have automotive plants building respirators and pillow factories making masks. Those stories have been in the media. Now, here's why we should do this. If China is manufacturing all these goods that we all need, what incentive will China have on making sure everyone gets supplied, especially when it is devastated by the disease as well, the pandemic? Globalization is not necessarily the devil, but we have put too much trust in the goodwill and cooperation of other countries. We should be producing our own medicines, power, and fuel. We have the capabilities, we should be using them. Exports should be for things that cannot be done here because we don't have the raw materials. We don't have the raw resources here to make those products. Now, I think there's lessons that both sides of the political spectrum should learn. The right should be learning that people can be supported outside of a crisis, as long as it's done in a physically responsible way. What's the problem? The left needs to learn to be proud of what we have. It needs to start putting its own country first and stop giving its own resources to everyone else. Both sides of the political spectrum also need to stop calling each other hypocrites just because we want to help people during a crisis too. It's getting nuts trying to follow politics at this point. But sadly, I think none of these lessons will be learned. I think no action will be taken on acting on these lessons. And this is going to be no matter who you vote in. It doesn't matter if Andrew Scheer would have won in October, if Jagmeet Singh would have won in October last year. It doesn't matter if Trump gets reelected or Joe Biden gets elected. It's just going to stay the same. It doesn't matter. None of the lessons we should be learning are going to be learned. However painfully obvious they are to see right now. And that's what I find so painful. Well, there it is. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this show. Stay safe and healthy out there. Don't panic. We will get through all this when the pandemic ends in 2025, 2030, or the year 3000 maybe. I kid. But don't expect this to be over anytime soon. Seriously. But until next time, stay fortified.
Oh, hi there, human. Thanks for watching the video. I'm Tiamat. Please subscribe to my human's channel. Click the red box and the bell icon. That will help us a lot. And please share. That helps even more. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.